Thank you very much. So what I am going to be presenting today is based upon 3 years of immersive digital ethnographic research focusing upon right-wing extremist female influencers. And what I found was that these women were playing key roles, that is plural, not a singular role, as propagandists, organizers, fundraisers, and entrepreneurs for the cause. And if you're going to leave now, but please don't, perhaps the biggest takeaway from this research was that right-wing extremist women have a key function, and that is normalizing and legitimizing right-wing extremist ideology for mainstream appeal. And I'll discuss how that happens through the following examples. I'll guide you through the photos on the slide in a minute, but to start off, when I think about these female influencers, the way that I conceptualize them are that they're leading online personalities that are helping to shape and popularize ideas within the movement. And importantly, they display the way they live their politics as an aspirational brand. By that I mean they merge their political ideology with personal lifestyle in such a recognizable brand in ways that their followers feel like they intimately know and feel close to these women. And they do so by portraying qualities of seeming to be relatable, accessible, authentic, and responsive to their followers in order to build and maintain their online persona. So take the example on the left. This is an Instagram story from Thais Descoufon. She was previously a spokesperson for the identitarian movement in France before it was banned by the government in 2021. And she continues to produce content promoting some of the same identitarian narratives. In this Instagram story, she's posted a video in which she's editing a video that's going to be released on her YouTube channel. And there's a countdown sticker that she uses as part of an Instagram story feature, in which her followers can tap to get a reminder of when that video is going to be released onto her YouTube channel. Now, in the past, we've seen marketing and PR firms use countdowns as a way to get audiences excited about brand launches for products. In this case, we see that these right-wing extremist women, they are themselves the brands that they are promoting, and they're getting their audiences excited about forthcoming content that's going to be released. On the right-hand side, this is an Instagram post by a Canadian influencer named Robin Riley. And I should note that when I started writing this book, Instagram was a vastly understudied platform in terms of its potential for radicalization. Now, Robin writes in the post, "Glow up. If it could happen to me, it can happen to anyone. Pick one, undereating, in a bad relationship for 7 years, heavy smoker, feeling numb inside, lost. Pick two, eating healthy, married and pregnant, off all drugs, feeling joy and gratitude for my life, saved." At the bottom, Robin writes, "These picks were taken 4 years apart, and it didn't happen overnight. You've got to put in the work for the reward. Be patient with yourself. Deprogramming is a long process." Now, on the surface, it doesn't seem like this post is inherently problematic until you understand the coded language that Robin is using to frame her own radicalization journey. So she uses the term glow up, which some of you here might be familiar with. It's a term that comes from the beauty blogging community to signify a period of personal transformation to achieve your best self or your most natural self. And here Robin is appropriating that term as a euphemism for her own radicalization journey. So she's framing her transformation as one of self-improvement, of boosting confidence. Now, when I started off this research, I had assumed that most of these women would be attempting to recruit and radicalize other women into the movement, or else why would they be so visibly present? But I very quickly found that on YouTube, not necessarily on other platforms like Instagram, these women had a disproportionate number of male followers, which I think fits into the theme of this panel when we talk about motivations and gendered narratives of radicalization. And so these women would purposely create videos targeting their male viewers in which they would promote narratives such as the war on men, as you see on the top left, or being sympathetic towards, well, as Joe just presented, incels. And in these narratives, they promote this idea that mainstream society is controlled by feminists and that men cannot exercise their, quote, biological forms of masculinity like aggression, dominance, and leadership. And if they join these right-wing extremist organizations, they can exercise these traits and ideally find a submissive wife. But sometimes the influence of these women can have very pernicious effects. On the bottom right-hand side, this is a photo taken during the trial of Philip Manshus, a young man who in 2019 was inspired by the Christchurch shooter and attempted to carry out a copycat attack at a mosque outside of Oslo, Norway. And during the trial, it was revealed that Manshus held National Socialist views, as well as deeply racist and misogynistic views. But what I found very interesting in the trial proceedings is that he mentioned at one point that his goal after committing this attack was to find a wife, have white children, and settle down in the Norwegian countryside, and directly citing the influence of Lana Laktef, whose screenshot is there on the left, a female influencer who he was an ardent, he would actually describe it as an obsessive follower of her content. So it became very clear to me the very dangerous effects that these women can have in influencing young men in their radicalization journeys. Now, I mentioned that these women have several roles within the movement, but by and large, they do see their primary role as the wives and mothers, which is very much continuing the legacy of previous right-wing extremist movements, but I wanted to understand how they were presenting that today. The photo on the left-hand side shows a flat lay of various products that Robin keeps in her pantry, in which she calls it some of my fave prepper pantry items. So Robin had posted this right after the January 6th attack at the US Capitol, at a time in the US when we were seeing right-wing extremists promote these narratives about an upcoming racial civil war in the country. And so showing it through this type of very aesthetic flat lay of products that she keeps for her family because she sees her role as being a provider. And then on the middle slide, promoting ideas such as the Great Replacement theory, saying that we are a global minority and we're being replaced in our homeland by aggressive immigration refugee programs, again, seeing the threat to what they consider to be white families as under threat. And then on the right-hand side, promoting anti-LGBTQ narratives, for instance, equating gay people with grooming young children. Because these women are influencers, entrepreneurism is also a very key aspect of their online persona, as well as how they receive a lot of financial support. So for instance, partnering with sponsors, often ideologically motivated sponsors to promote merchandise. Sorry, I can't go into too much detail because of time constraints. Or on the right-hand side, promoting things like health and wellness products that became very popular during the pandemic, like these supplements. And you'll see the name of this supplements company is called Higher Health, or HH, which is a signal for Heil Hitler. And finally, to discuss some of the transnational ties, because this was actually mentioned during Mr. Martinez's keynote speech earlier today, how we see these women play a pivotal role in terms of cementing transnational ties, both sort of on the ground grassroots mobilization, like we saw during the pandemic, during anti-lockdown and anti-vax protests, but also more formally through conferences and speeches promoting ideas like the Great Replacement theory, which has had very insidious effects in motivating terrorist attacks, as we know here in this room. Now, I should mention that for these women that I studied, when they were promoting the Great Replacement conspiracy theory in 2017, it was considered to be a very fringe talking point. Now we're seeing these women stand up in front of public venues promoting this theory as a sort of a mainstream talking point. Do I have some time?
You're going okay.
Okay, good. So I wanted to end by talking about some of the countering initiatives that we should think about. And this is a very simplistic overview, so I appreciate that with this audience. But when we talk about countering right-wing extremism online, we often do so through what I would call both hard and soft approaches. So hard approaches being that, namely, through content moderation, that is a set of practices that rely on technical tools that platforms will use. And in my work, I call this the 4 Ds of content moderation: deplatforming, demonetization, deranking, deranking refers to restricting the visibility in search results, and detection, using a mix of human and automated machine learning to detect violative content. Now, it goes without saying that for many of these women, they're very well aware of these measures that have been implemented to restrict their activity. Like the photo on the left-hand side is an Instagram story in which Robin writes, "The Kufra jab," that's the COVID vaccine, "could affect female and male fertility. This is all a plan to reduce the population via widespread sterilization." And then she writes further on how Bill Gates is spearheading the push for mandatory vaccination, ... So both combining great replacement conspiracy narratives as well as scientific disinformation in one post. But some of you might notice that she deliberately manipulates the spelling of vaccination in that post using special characters. And if some of you remember, during the pandemic, Instagram introduced a feature where posts containing words like COVID, vaccination, etc., automatically received a pop-up banner that would direct users to official statistics provided by the World Health Organization about the virus. And so these users find creative ways to circumvent the moderation of their content. Or on the right-hand side, how we see cases of perhaps false positives in mainly automated machine learning detection, such as Robin there posting a photo in which she bought a vacuum for her household. Well, for some reason, Instagram thought that she had said vaccine, and so the algorithm flagged it. Now, the thing is, there's just not a lot of transparency. We don't know why this particular post was flagged. We don't know if previously because Robin had been flagged for spreading scientific disinformation, or this was just a flaw in the machine learning. And with this, we also, I would note, see two particular instances, one which I would like to think of as gender blind spots when it comes to content moderation of right-wing extremist women, and the second being cross-platform posting activities. So the photo on the left is taken from Brittany Zellner's Instagram page, the photo on the right from her Telegram page. She is prohibited from showing photos of her husband's face on Instagram. So you can see she filters the photo with a flag covering his face. She posts the exact same photo on her Telegram account for her audience. And I should note that, like her husband, Brittany has faced legal prosecution but denied entry at country borders, but because she doesn't explicitly violate the platform's terms of service, she's allowed to remain and to continue pushing propaganda on the platform. Wrapping up, I promise.
Please do.
Yeah. As opposed to hard approaches, soft approaches is another way that we can think about countering initiatives. I won't go into counter narratives because I think many of us here are very familiar with counter narratives work. But I do think we should be focusing more attention on counter influencers. That is these individuals who are creating content purposely to debunk or to mystify a lot of these extremist talking points, some examples I showed there on the slide. However, if we are to employ counter-influencers formally, we do need to think about what is their motivation or their ideology in creating that content, what are the strategies that they solicit for audience engagement, and what are the potential risks of including them in, say, formal counter-extremism programming. And what we should put at the forefront is that for these counter-influencers, they need to maintain credibility with their audiences and allow them to maintain control or autonomy over the creative process in order to be seen as authentic and legitimate to their audiences. So, just the key takeaways from this is how I've shown that right-wing extremist female influencers are using coded language in apolitical lifestyle content. So content that focuses on self-help, on food vlogging, on health and wellness, in order to relate and appeal to broad audiences while at the same time promoting their extremist ideology. But what lends success for these women is that they exploit the visibility and algorithmic amplification on these platforms, but so do counter-influencers, which is why we should consider both within our PCVE efforts. Thank you.